Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
and inspire you to do even greater things.
Before we jump into today's conversation, a special thanks to PM Power Consulting for encouraging and supporting this show right from the start. With over 1,000 person-years of collective experience, PM Power has helped many organizations, teams, and individuals chart out their own journeys of excellence and make progress. Thank you, PM Power. Now, let's move to today's episode. Today, I'm in conversation with the serial author and colleague at PM Power, Paramu Kurumathur. We talk about his upcoming book on leadership, what the triggers were, and how this book builds on the previous books but focuses on general leadership principles. It talks about the three aspects of leadership involving execution, business, and personal growth. The importance of reconciling leadership styles in different contexts and to be a holistic leader so that the principles can be applied to both professional and personal contexts. He also talks about some of the challenges and solutions leaders face, such as handling conflicts, mediating between different opinions, subordinating personal goals to team and organizational goals, or even addressing behavioral expectations and the public image as a leader. Of course, that naturally led to a conversation on thought leadership. And finally, Paramu also shares the structure of the book and how that can be used as a reference or to locate specific principles and practices that would be applicable in a context or a situation that a leader is in. Listen on. Hi, Paramu. Welcome back to the Software People Stories.
Thank you, Shiv. It's been great always, talking to you and recording my ideas and my thoughts with you. Right? You are a great podcast host, right? And I'm happy that your podcasts are doing so well in the market. Great.
Thank you. But then this time I thought we'll do it a little differently.
Okay.
Because normally all our conversations have been unscripted and then somehow the topics have flown. This time I thought we'll talk about something that seems to be a kind of under the wheels work that you're doing.
Right.
And the way I see you writing books appear so easy.
Right.
I thought I should also probably do some work and then come up with some questions beforehand.
Okay.
But then I didn't have the time to write down all those things, but probably some things that are at the back of my mind. Okay. So the format may be slightly different in the sense this could be either pointed questions or something more to explore.
Okay.
Since our audience knows you well, since you've spoken so many times, they also know you as an author, or as a serial author, publishing in not only technical topics, but also fiction, as well as non-fiction and Sanskrit and all that. What was the trigger for the theme for your upcoming book? I still haven't revealed what it is. I would like you to tell our listeners.
Okay. Well, the trigger is very, very simple. Right now, I am the resident author, as it were, as you said. The writing is in me, or whatever that is. Right now, as far as PM Power, the organization that we both work for, is concerned, right? So we have actually been working in the area of project management and program management. We have been working in the area of agile, right? And then we have been working in the leadership. Right? Now, we have written books on project management and program management. We have written books on agile, so it behooves us to write a book on leadership, right? So that is the real trigger for this, right? And we also have a leadership program that some of our people are conducting, mainly, bringing to fore certain leadership practices, right? So I want to write a book that actually encompasses some of those things, as well as look at a higher level of leadership, right? Look at leadership from a higher level, right? In terms of values of leadership and principles and practices. So that was a trigger, right? So something had to be done about leadership since we have done on program and project management and on Agile. Yeah, so that was a real trigger.
So, was the preparation for this book any different from what you did for your previous books?
No, not really. See, basically, what the way we prepare for these books is we look at what we have done as an organization, what I have done personally, what our colleagues have done, right, in the area of leadership, and what their experiences have been, right. And then, so I've talked to many of our people, right, and figured out what they did, and then also this leadership course that has been going on, right. That also is a reference. Plus, of course, there are so many books that we have read and so many websites and e-books and others that we have referred. So all these put together form the source for this book. So that is the background, right?
So even in your earlier book on enterprise agility, the 5 tantras, you talk about leadership. Is this a continuation of that, or is this a different take on the whole leadership theme?
It is, you can call it some sort of a continuation, because in that book we talk of, for example, transformational leadership, right? How transformational leadership affects the agile environment, right? And also we talk about what are the role of an executive in the transformation, right? So that leadership is basically looking at how agile can be furthered, right? Whereas here it's general leadership, right? So that is the main difference between these two. So I've taken some of the points from the previous book, but here is more of general leadership principles rather than just for agile. That is mainly for agile environments.
At least the way I understand leadership is that it is a spectrum.
Right.
Some are very popular leaders. Some have been very successful leaders, may not be very well known. And there are some who combine both. They have been successful and they are popular and all that. And of course, there are a lot of people, including me at least, who kind of struggle through understanding the nuances of leadership. Now, suddenly you're just thrust into whether it is leading a team. I'm sure you remember those initial days when you're figuring out what to do. Suddenly, when you get a memo, right, or some notification, how do you dispose of that when you are not the person who's doing it, but then probably getting it done through others or enabling others to do it, etc., etc. So, with that amount of variation in terms of whether it is leadership style or the leadership effectiveness and so on, how do you pick something that could relate to when you say it is about general leadership to, say, a larger audience? Or is it something for very specific types of leaders or leaders in specific industries and so on?
Okay, as you said, when those days when we were actually just becoming leaders, right? I mean, if there is a crisis suddenly, the first reaction is to run to Mr. Shetty's canteen to have a cup of tea, right? So, I mean, that's how we actually grew into the leadership role, right? The main thing is that here you look at certain. In fact, I start off the book by talking about how the leader should be a Superman, right? Right, and I refer this back to our old Indian concept of Ashta Siddhis or Ashta Aishwaryas, right? Garima, Laghima, right? So leadership, so that's actually all the qualities of a Superman, right? So 8 qualities of a Superman. So if you look at the Justice League, different super people have different superpowers. And this actually combines all the powers together, right? So a Superman, a super leader or a leader has to have all these 8 superpowers in him. So he should be able to have, he should be able to increase his weight, to the highest level possible, so that nobody can move him in terms of integrity. His integrity cannot be in any way moved because he's increased his weight so much, right? Similarly, if you look at the leader should have a growth mindset, of vision. That's a mahima, right? So it has growth. So becoming as large as possible and becoming as small, right? To be able to make the ego very, very small, right? So all these superpowers we are talking about. So that's how we generalize it to everybody, right? And then we look at some of the values of leadership, right? First of all, we look at 3 dimensions. One being leading execution, another being leading business, another being leading one's own self, right? So having these 3, we look at certain values of leadership, right? For example, innovation is a value, right? Our passion is a value. And within those values, we look at certain principles of leadership, right? For example, in the value of innovation, if you're a leader in your organization, you will have a business model for innovation, right? So the whole model will be based on innovation, right? Looking at new ideas. That should be rather than just supporting, right? So this is how we look at how whatever we did as an organization and what we did before, we bring it all together into a general scheme. That's what I've done.
So this one may be a little out of syllabus question. So if that is so, you can say so. See, the Ashtasiddhis that you mentioned, I think it's a very interesting analogy.
Right.
Because the Siddha is both a person who has accomplished things as well as someone who is enlightened.
Right.
So we get this question whenever we talk about topics like mindfulness.
Right.
Which is labeled or considered by some people as a path to enlightenment.
Right.
Where the nature of a person who is enlightened seems to be somewhat passive. Whereas as a leader, when you want to accomplish things, you need to be active and involved and probably on the ground doing things and so on. How would you reconcile this?
Actually, if you look at the principles of leadership here, in leading self, we have 3 principles. One is enjoying the journey, right? Now, enjoying the journey is more of passive. You just sit back. As things go, you just enjoy what's happening. When you do your work, as Krishna said, only in your action, you have your right? Not in the fruits, right? So you enjoy a journey. At the same time, you need commitment to action. Right. In fact, there is a section where I actually try to reconcile this commitment to action and enjoying the journey. Right. So let me just look at that and tell you what it is. Commitment to action is the cause and the manifestation of performance orientation. Whether it's personal or professional goals or contribution to society and community, commitment to action is essential for turning visions into fact. Right. So it makes them want to move forward despite obstacles. Right. Therefore, the whole idea of commitment to action is actually staying motivated. While you're enjoying the journey, you also have to stay motivated. And that's done through commitment to action, right? So there is as I said, there is the Siddhas are more passive in nature, right? At the same time, they also are motivated by some things. For example, if you look at the Siddhas who come to Mahakumbha Mela, right? I mean, they're enjoying the journey. They also have some motive, right? Coming and bathing in the Ganges and Yamuna, right? So they have also that commitment to action. So it's not reconciling the what do you call it, the Siddha style or staying back and relaxed style and enjoying the journey style to the commitment to action, right? By saying that is needed for motivation, right? So any journey needs some kind of motivation, and that's what this gives you.
Yeah, I don't know if it is a reasonable inference to draw an analogy. Again, going on Siddha, the Siddha system of medicine, getting into the details,
right,
is also a fairly involved system.
Right.
Like whether it is Ayurveda, homeopathy, or allopathy, and all that. Which means that there is probably an understanding of the larger picture and the interaction of, say, the environment with the elements of the body. When they use various herbs to either balance things in the body or cure things, or the way they treat and so on. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, Siddhas are, while they appear outwardly passive, are probably active thinkers and doers with a larger picture and an ecosystem thinking.
Right.
Okay. So there is also this eternal debate
Right. No,
on.
just actually taking on from where what you just said.
Mhm.
We have in this book, we talk of seeing the big picture, right?
Oh, okay.
So there is a section, as a principle called seeing the big picture or the big elephant or whatever. So once you see the big picture, right, and then you later break it down to smaller things, right, to ensure that you see the wood for the trees and you see the trees for the wood. So you see both, right? So that's important. First, you have to see the whole wood, then you have to see the trees. That's important, right? So we discuss that in the book, right? So, and also we talk of sustainability as a big leadership principle, right? So all these herbs and all this kind of stuff are there for you only if you make your leadership style sustainable, so that there is something left for the next generation, right? So we talk of that also in the book.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm getting curiouser and curiouser. Unlike the earlier books, I haven't had any inkling of what is coming. But then, yeah, just like this, I thought it would be good for our listeners also to know what is coming. Okay?
Right.
It does look very interesting. So, a couple of questions based on this. Since you're talking about a more holistic approach to leadership and all that. So, is this a combination of both leadership in the professional context and the personal context, or the work-life spheres or hemispheres?
Yeah, it is both. In fact, of course, it's mainly in the organizational context, right? Because you talk of leading business and you talk of leading the execution of the business, right? But then there is a section on leading self, which we claim is needed for both leading execution and leading business, right? So the leading self part is purely a personal thing, right? So we talk of things like how you need to proactively seek change, which is true whether it's a business thing or your own life, right? Or you talk of enjoying the journey, as I said before. We talk of being trustworthy, right? Talk of being open to inputs. But all these are both personal as well as business environment based things. So we have both.
Because one thing that I've seen come across many times, or many people have also narrated this, is compared to a professional or a work or an organizational context, where it may be a little easier to navigate various paths because you can broadly identify the stakeholders. Now, and then you can have your RASI matrix and things like that to say who's responsible, accountable, who's interested, and so on. But then there are also these business models or the business school models that talk about identifying the right levers and then using or gaining the support of some of the influencers and so on within the organization to bring in change.
Right.
But in the family context, many times there are a lot of influencers who may or may not be connected as intensely, but depending on the situation, what they feel or do or say could have a great impact.
Right.
Could be because of their age, or could be because of their experience, or could be because of their family status and things like that. So that's where I was trying to understand whether the leading self is one thing, but then when you also have to work within or live within a family system, whether any of these principles would be applicable there as well.
I think they should be applicable. Of course, leading self is applicable anywhere, right? So that's clear. But even if you look at business acumen,
Mm.
as a principle, right?
Mhm.
In a household, right?
Mm.
You need to have business acumen to make sure that your finances are looked at properly, right?
Mm.
It's
Mm.
some sort of business acumen,
Mhm.
and there are different things pulling at you. You have your children's education. You have what your wife wants. You have need for spending on the car, on new items, right? So there are lots of things. So how do you actually uh, ration your finances
Mm.
into what is needed, right?
Mm.
Into different areas of what you need. At the
Mhm.
same time, what are the new things you want to look at? Right?
Mm.
Oh, let's say you are a businessman,
Mm.
right? Running a kirana shop.
Mm.
You want to figure out whether investing in a new shop that sells coconuts is
Mhm.
good or not.
Mm.
Right? So even at the small, at the family run business, family itself
Mm.
level, I think these things are surely applicable. Some of these principles, though not everything, but some of them certainly are applicable.
That's interesting. So there is this
See, actually, you also talked of influencers. In fact, in this book, we do talk of, in fact, we talk of actually making sure that the stakeholders are all bought into any new venture, right? So we talk of stakeholder buy-in, right?
Mm.
So this is exactly like the influencers, right?
Mm.
And we also use the shareholders. So there's a background story here, right? And we use the shareholders in the story to go and acquire a new company, right?
Okay.
We use their influence.
Mm.
Just like you talked of influences in the family, old people and all those people who will help you do things. Right? We talk of influencers here also. Though I don't think I've used the term influencer. Maybe I should.
Yeah. See, this eternal unresolved debate on whether leaders are born or made, or like what Stephen Covey says, is it a product of nature or nurture? What is your position in this book?
I think it's both, right? But if you look at Mahatma Gandhi, right? So he was a born leader, and when he went to South Africa, right, in a very hostile environment, he took on leadership, right? And there actually he actually learned from that experience. And again, when he came back to India, the environment was different, right? And again, he took on the mantle of leadership. And then he learned as he went along, right? He did something that are not very palatable when you hear about it today. And he did many things that were good, right? So he did both. He was actually a human being, right? So the same thing goes with Martin Luther King. He didn't study leadership in some Harvard or something. He was a naturally born leader. Or if you take Tata, I mean, he started all these new organizations. There was no Harvard then. There was no Harvard in India in those days. So these are not people who are born leaders who acquire the techniques of leadership by trial and error, right? So nature versus nurture, and you need both, right? So and nurture is actually self-nurture in many of these cases. It's not nurtured by somebody else. Whereas in today's world, you find that leaders are nurtured by others. Even if you take a person like Bill Gates, nobody nurtured him. I think he nurtured himself. Or even a person like Narayana Murthy, I think kind of self-nurtured. Right? So lots of these leaders have some natural spirit in them that makes them a leader. And you see that in this self-organization or creation of self-leaders, emergence of leaders, that happens in all organizations. Even if you take the case of Dhwani, for example, you emerge as a leader there, right? Nobody actually gave you that leadership. You went there, you joined them, you emerged as a leader. That's how you actually started. That's how you got into the board and things like that. So if you have some natural leadership qualities, and then you learn from mistakes, I think that should make you a good leader.
So taking this thought further, is it right for me to say that what you described just now is a style of a situational leader. That is, you see something or something that is missing in the environment, and you kind of step in, contribute, take charge, whatever, so that you can make a difference to the people around you.
Okay, I think the word situational leader has got some kind of special meaning in the leadership circles. But when I say, I'm saying situational leader exactly as you said. There are leaders who see certain situations and they come in and take charge, right? They emerge as leaders like you did, right? I don't want to call it a situational leader because it's got a certain connotation in the leadership circles. It is a situational leadership, right? And so you have leadership qualities inherent in you. And then you use that and see a situation where you think something is needed. That's exactly how Gandhiji became a leader. Right? Came to India, or he was in South Africa. He saw a certain situation where he said that something is needed, and therefore he came and contributed. Right. So that's how it happens. Yeah.
Okay. Now, extending that further, now that you are in a leadership position or a leadership role, irrespective of your title, because I don't think this is based only on the seniority or where you are in the organization. Maybe within your team, within your department, within your business unit, whatever else, you could still play some leadership roles, right? From being an individual contributor, where most people start as, irrespective of what industry they are in, and they get into these leadership roles, yes, there is one aspect of being able to deal with the larger picture, being able to deal with ambiguity, and all that, or being able to deal with numbers, all your planning and tracking and all that. Since leadership involves followership, and I can't just go and then just declare that I'm a leader if nobody follows me, right? But the moment you have followers, many times, either there are conflicts between followers, the infighting or sub-factionalism and other things could be there. So how does one prepare for that?
Actually, if you have seen the show Yes Minister, right, the minister says, I am their leader, I must follow them, right? So, I think that even though he said that as a joke, I think there's a lot of sense in what he says, right? As a leader, the main thing is you have to subordinate your own goals, right, to the team's goals. That's very important, to the general organizational goals, right? What I find is many leaders don't finally succeed because they actually have their ego and their own goals as primary, right? Not the organizations or the team's goals. So one of the key things that when you go from being an individual contributor, where your ego and your goals are paramount, right? Because you have been told what to do, and your KRA what to tells you what you have to do, and that is your goal. Whereas as a leader, your KRA is simply saying that you should lead, and which means that for you to lead, you have to actually ensure that your goals are subordinate. Your own self goals are not self goals. That's a football term. Your own goals are subordinated to that of the team, right? And of course, in many a case, you talk of conflicts. Many a case, these conflicts are good, because then you can see different opinions coming out, right? Different people have different opinions. And then as a leader, your main thing is to ensure that you actually are able to kind of mediate or negotiate between these different opinions, right? And help people come to some common understanding. So that is, as a leader, that's one of your main roles. So subordinating your own ideas and your goals to the team's goals, and ensuring that you're able to negotiate well and mediate between these conflicting opinions. Because those people are individual contributors and they have their own goals, right? So it's where, as a leader, you try to bring all those together. That's the main goal.
Yeah, that's good. But then many times, whether it is a business leader or a religious leader or anyone who is considered to be a leader, the followers impose certain behavioral either restrictions or, oh, as a leader, you should not do this. As a leader, everything is public. You don't have a personal life. As a leader, this, that, and all that. So when you become a leader, now how do you handle that stress of wearing this leadership mask or a cloak, whatever you want to call that?
Yeah. See, the thing is that if you look at our political leaders, they have two lives, right? They have a life which is their own at home and how they behave in private to people. And the way they behave in public is completely different, right? Only occasionally you see they show the slip, right? Otherwise, they're normally very pakka in their behavior in public, right? That is because the people have imposed on them certain requirements, right, on how to behave. As a leader, you have to wear white dhoti and white kurta. And that's one of the things that are imposed on them. They have no escape from that, right? If you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt, you don't look like a leader in India. Right? Whereas in the US, if you go to UK and you can drink a beer in a pub, you can be a leader. Whereas in India, if you drink a beer, you will lose the next election, right? So all there are different morals, right, which people have, which they try to impose on the leader. Or it's also that maybe the leader feels that that's how the people will want them to be. Maybe a leader can actually say that, no, I'm going to drink. You vote for me. Maybe that will work. We don't know. Right? But many a time the leaders are actually too scared to step out of what they think their followers want. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's the main thing. So there's a lot of imposition from the followership onto the leaders. Yes. Because there's a certain right way. In fact, if you read the Raghuvamsha, the Kalidasa talks of how Dilipa, the first king, his subjects did not move out of the path like a chariot or a cart could not move out of the rut through which the wheels move. It's like a railway. In those days, there's no railways, but all these chariot ruts or the ruts, the wheels could not get out of those ruts. The people behaved exactly as ordered, right? Because those days the leaders, kings were, running what I call a protection racket, right? So, but these days it's the other way. Leaders have to, until you become a leader, in your own right, and you become so powerful that people will start doing what you want, right? Yeah.
So, do these same or very similar principles apply to becoming a thought leader in a very flippant way? I can probably say that all these social media influencers call themselves as thought leaders. I go buy a blue, whatever it is, water bottle. Then now everybody has to get a blue water bottle, right? So it's leadership, but not in a direct action or deliverable or not with your team. But then I want to be a thought leader. That's what everybody says.
People like, let's say, Shankaracharya or Socrates. They're all thought leaders, right? So they have their own. I hope that's what you mean by thought leadership, right? They had their own ideas, right? And their ideas, they made people believe in their ideas, right? And accept their ideas. So, but there's nothing like doing anything. Shankaracharya didn't tell anybody to go and do that. Neither did Socrates, right? So, but they had certain ideas which people decided are good enough for them also to think about and to impart to others, right? And that's what many of these religious leaders actually do that. All these evangelists and religious leaders in India, right? Including Nityananda, right? They all have their own ideas of how they have their own thoughts, and they try to influence people into accepting their thoughts. Sadhguru or Sri Ravi Shankar, or many of these people, right? And that doing something is only secondary. The main thing is the ideas, right? So that's the whole concept. Right? And many political parties in India and overseas also have this idea of having people understand how to think, right? And then the main thing is, certain sections of people are good, certain sections are bad, right? So you have to get into that thinking, right? And then and once you think of that and you accept that, then your behavior changes heavily, right? So so the thought leadership, I think, is influencers or whatever. In fact, if you look at there are certain people in social media who I follow regularly. I listen to them, and it's nothing that they don't tell you to do anything. They just tell you to, they just give you ideas. Yeah. So that's what it is.
So probably this is also a little out of the main topic, but then there is this confusion, particularly in the entertainment industry, right? Many actors are considered heroes because they play the roles of heroes in movies or dramas or wherever. Okay. And this extended leadership quality of being a hero or a superhero makes a lot of people do a lot of things which sometimes may feel illogical. So is that also one form of the thought leadership, a thought influencership?
Yes, it is, certainly. Because see, if you look at the youngsters in, say, Bangalore, right? Many youngsters, they the way they behave, right, are like in Rajinikanth, very, very tough looking, right? And they're not yielding in any way. So you brush your car against their car, they start shouting at you, and all that is imbibed from the Rajinikanth or from the old MGR style of leadership or influence, right? Now, in fact, we had a lecturer called Dr. Anthony Reddy in IIT. He says one of the main damages done by all these actors, big-time actors in movies, is that, in the movie, this MGR or Shivaji Ganesan or whoever, right, or Dilip Kumar, whatever, right, the mother is not well. And then they go and help the mother, and they actually sacrifice everything for the mother. They sacrifice their life. They don't get married. They throw their wives out, as the mother said. So what happens is the poor village women, they expect their sons to behave in that fashion, right? Oh, that's one of the real damages done by, and then the sons don't behave that way, even though there are a lot of bluster, but they can't behave that way, right? So that's one of the damages. Then the mothers are actually very, very unhappy. And this is one of the damages done by these influencers. And the same thing goes, I think, for our current social media influencers also. Because youngsters are influenced, they expect certain things from their parents, certain things from society, which does not happen. Right? And that's where the whole disappointment starts coming in.
So coming back to the book, is this book also following your, I don't want to call it a tradition, of weaving it around a story?
Yes, it is. The same. So this happens in the same organization as the previous books. So, and the same main character, Dr. Vishnu Sharman, right? So he again actually is called in to help them acquire a new company. So the organization PCSO, right? They actually acquire a new organization, right? Because they want to get out of their old mold and do an innovative thing because they have some money in their pockets, right? So Vishnu Sharman helps them go through the whole process. So that's how the book is.
So does it expect the reader to be familiar with all the characters and having read the previous books?
Not really, because I give an introduction at the beginning, right? So that will help them understand it. But everything is actually tied properly to the previous ones. So in case somebody wants to go back to the previous book, I mean, there's nothing that is kind of out of gel with the previous book.
So there are no mysteries that are unraveled here whose clues were buried in the earlier books.
No. No.
Okay.
See, the other thing is that in the previous book, there are some references to some mythology and all that kind of stuff, right? In this book, there's no such thing because already it's about 85,000 words, right?
Wow.
So if we add all these mythologies and all these things over, it'll be more than 100,000 words. So I cut out all those things, and it's pure leadership things. That's it, nothing more.
Yeah, but then considering the time pressures on leaders,
Right.
how is this book structured? Do I have to read from page 1 to end, or can I pick up something in between? 400 pages looks a little big.
No, but it's actually structured in terms of the three dimensions I talked about: leading execution, leading business, and leading self. And within that, it talks about all the principles, and then the practices needed to enable these principles. So if you're looking at some particular principles of leadership, you can come here directly to that and look at that, right? So you don't have to go through the whole book. Since it's structured in terms of principles and practices, you can directly come there and look at the principle and the practices. See, in our leadership framework that's been used for teaching, we talk of three dimensions: leading self, leading people, and leading business, which I have actually changed a little bit to make sure that the story can flow properly into leading. So leading people is subsumed within leading business and leading execution. Right? That's to make sure the story flows through properly. So here the story now flows through properly.
So are you leaving sufficient indicators for a sequel or a follow-up to this book? Or does this book look reasonably complete?
The only sequel I can think of here is basically you expand, like we did with the Tantra books. We can look at expanding each of those principles and practices. But it's not all that promising, I think. So I don't think there'll be a sequel to this book. I don't think, right? Unless somebody else can take it up and do the principles and practices. I don't think I can write a sequel to this book.
Because many leaders keep saying that it is lonely at the top. Now that I've reached here, what do I do next? So beyond the book.
Yeah. In fact, last 2 or 3 days, I've not been doing anything, right? Just been relaxing. Of course, I now I have to go back to my calendar book. I had kind of kept that aside to write this book. Now that this is almost over, of course, there'll be some editing, all that kind of stuff to be done. When that is over, right, then I have to go back to my calendar book. I've also started writing a script. Now, when I went to US this time to my son's place, son and daughter-in-law said, "Why don't you write a script, a movie script?" So I said, "Okay, let me write." I don't know. It's not that anybody will accept it, but just write it. So I will write it. So I've written all the scenes. About 43 scenes are there. Written 43 different scenes, right? And then I have to write the conversations there. And then Preeta will translate it into Malayalam.
Okay.
And we'll start sending it to various if they accept it. Because in India, English, I don't know. We can send it to Netflix and see. But it's a story about Nambudris and all, right?
Okay.
It still have more play in Kerala than anywhere else. Trying to do that. So these are the two things. Let's see.
Two thoughts can kind of trigger by what you said. Is see, as a movie script, I don't know if all the scripts or many of the very nice and potentially blockbuster scripts were all burned down in the LA fires.
Right.
So maybe they are looking for new scripts.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
New authors and new scripts.
Yeah, in the Palisades fire, no? Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing was, I couldn't resist this thing saying that for this leadership book, it's as if saying time can wait. When you said you put your calendar book on hold.
Yeah, correct.
So even time can wait.
Can wait for
Because I think leadership is such an important topic, and increasingly more today, with so much of animosity and hatred and the rivalry and the things that are happening in the world. I think the world needs healers, and the healers will be leaders, or leaders will be healers.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm very eagerly looking forward, for the publication of this book, the moment it comes out.
Right.
So, yeah. All the best, Paramu.
Okay. Thank you, Chef. Great talking to you.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.